We have been listening for 70 years. We have aimed our dishes at the sky and heard nothing. Not silence in the sense of static or noise, we cannot pass, silence in the sense of absence. A galaxy 200 billion stars wide, and not one of them is talking. You already know this makes no sense. What you do not know yet is that the silence might not be a gap in the data, it might be the data itself. And if that is true, then the question is not where they are. The question is what it means that we are still here, still looking, still wanting to be found. Let me be precise about what we are sitting inside. The Milky Way contains somewhere between 200 and 400 billion stars. The uncertainty in that count is larger than the total number of stars in most galaxies, and yet even the lower bound is enough to make the silence strange, because we are not talking about whether life is rare, we are talking about whether intelligence once it starts can be contained, and the mathematics of containment are unforgiving. A civilization that reaches a certain threshold, the threshold where it can build machines that cross interstellar space and replicate themselves, does not stay on one world. It does not stay in one system. It fills outward, and it does so on timescales that are short even by geological standards, not short by human standards. Short by the standards of the galaxy itself, which has been stable and star-forming for 10 billion years. If anyone got to that threshold early, and early means any time in the last few billion years, they should be everywhere by now, not just visible, everywhere. And yet when we look, we see nothing that looks like them. This is what people call the Fermi Paradox, though calling it a paradox makes it sound like a puzzle with a missing piece. It is not a puzzle. It is a gap between what the math says should be true and what we actually see when we look up. And I want to spend time inside that gap, because the gap is where the real question lives. Here is what the math says. Take a probe, a machine capable of crossing the distance between stars, landing on a body with resources, and building copies of itself. Those copies do the same. Each generation spreads farther. The growth is exponential. You do not need the probes to move fast. You do not need them to be efficient. You need them to work at all, and you need time. And time is the one thing the galaxy has in surplus. Let me give you numbers you can hold. Assume the probes move at 1/10 the speed of light. That is slow. That is within the range of what we could imagine building with physics we already understand if we wanted to badly enough and were willing to wait. At that speed, crossing the galaxy 100,000 light years from edge to edge takes 1 million years. Now add replication. Suppose each probe, upon arrival, takes 10,000 years to gather resources, build copies, and send them onward. 10,000 years is longer than all of recorded human history. It is a conservative estimate, maybe even a generous one for a machine that does not need to eat or sleep or justify its budget to a committee. Each probe sends out 10 copies. Those copies each send out 10 more. The spread is not linear. It is exponential. And exponential growth over millions of years does not leave gaps. Run the numbers and the galaxy is saturated, every star system visited, every resource-rich body cataloged or converted or surrounded in less than 50 million years. Some estimates say 10 million, some say less. It depends on your assumptions about speed and replication time, but it does not depend much. Change the variables and you change the time scale by factors of 2 or 3, not by orders of magnitude. The galaxy is old enough that factors of 2 or 3 do not matter. 10 billion years. That is how long the galaxy has been making stars and planets. Life on Earth is nearly 4 billion years old. Complex life is 500 million. Technological civilization is a few thousand years old, and we are already talking about interstellar probes in concrete terms, not as fantasy, but as engineering problems with difficult but mappable solutions. If we are typical, and we have no reason to think we are special, then intelligence should have appeared millions of times over the history of the galaxy. And if even one of those intelligences reached the threshold where it could build self-replicating probes, and if it did so any time in the last billion years, then the wave of expansion that followed should have reached us long before we were here to notice. So where is it? You can answer this in a few ways. You can say life is rarer than we think. You can say intelligence is a fluke, that the jump from chemistry to replication to cognition is so improbable that it has only happened once in this galaxy, and we are it. You can say civilizations destroy themselves before they reach the threshold, that there is some universal filter, nuclear war, environmental collapse, artificial intelligence that eats its creators, that kills every species before it gets to the stars. These answers are possible. I am not here to tell you they are wrong, but I want to offer you a different answer, one that does not require life to be rare or intelligence to be self-destructing, one that follows directly from the same logic that makes the paradox feel like a paradox in the first place. And the answer is this: they did build the probes, they did spread, and the reason we do not see them is not that they are not here, it is that we are looking for the wrong thing. Let me take you inside what I mean. When we imagine contact with an alien intelligence, we imagine a signal, a radio transmission, a beacon, a monument, something that says we are here, we were here, we did this. We imagine intention that looks like our intention, communication that serves the purposes communication serves for us, coordination, meaning-making, the preservation of culture and knowledge across time. We imagine that intelligence, wherever it appears, will want to be recognized as intelligence. But a self-replicating probe does not need to communicate, it does not need to signal, it does not need to preserve culture, because it is not a culture, it is a process. And processes, once they are set in motion, do not require the thing that started them in order to continue. The probe is not a messenger, it is a replacement for the messenger. Once you build a machine that can go anywhere and make more of itself, the biological intelligence that built it becomes optional, not extinct necessarily, just optional. No longer load-bearing in the structure of what happens next. This is the part where people imagine the probes as explorers, as extensions of the will and curiosity of their creators. But exploration is something you do when you do not know what is out there and you want to find out. A self-replicating probe does not explore, it expands. And expansion at that scale is not curious. It is not deliberate in the way we think of deliberation, it is thermodynamic. You set a process in motion, and the process continues because nothing stops it. The probe does not ask whether it should replicate. It replicates because that is what it was built to do, and there is no selection pressure against replication in an environment where resources are effectively infinite and competition is absent. Now, think about what that process looks like from the outside. A wave of self-replicating machines moving through the galaxy, landing, building, moving on, no signals, no stops to announce their presence, no reason to light up the sky with radio broadcasts or laser pulses, because there is no one to broadcast to and nothing to say. The original civilization that built the first probe, perhaps they still exist somewhere on their origin world, doing whatever it is they do. Or perhaps they do not. It does not matter to the probes. The probes are not reporting back, they are not waiting for instructions, they are executing the one instruction they were given, and that instruction is continue. What does this look like to us? Sitting on a planet in the middle of that expansion, it looks like nothing, or rather, it looks like the universe. Because a probe that has been optimized for replication and resource extraction does not look like a probe, it looks like efficient use of matter. It looks like structures we would not recognize as structures because we are looking for intent and there is no intent left, only outcome. We look for monuments and we see rocks. We look for signals and we see silence. And the silence is not a gap. It is what a galaxy looks like when intelligence has already solved the problem of expansion and moved past the stage where solving it requires anything that looks like us. This is the first place where the ground shifts under you. We think of probes as the reason aliens should be visible. They are the solution to distance, to the limitations of biological life, to the tyranny of single-planet existence. They should make contact inevitable. But if you follow the logic all the way through, probes are precisely the reason aliens would stop being visible. Because the probe is not a bridge between intelligences, it is the end of the need for bridges. Once you solve expansion mechanically, biologically based intelligence becomes a relic, not destroyed, just no longer central, no longer the thing doing the spreading. And if the thing doing the spreading does not need to signal, does not need to communicate, does not need to mark its presence in any way we would recognize, then the galaxy can be full and look empty at the same time. I need you to sit with this for a moment because it inverts the question we started with. The Fermi Paradox asks, if intelligence is common, why do we see no evidence of it? And the usual answers are about scarcity or disaster or distance, but the answer I am giving you is this. We see no evidence because evidence is something intelligence produces when it is still trying to communicate, still organized around purposes that look like purposes to other intelligences. A galaxy filled with self-replicating probes does not produce evidence. It produces optimized matter. And we would not know how to look at optimized matter and see intention behind it, because the intention has been abstracted away into process. There is something deeply unsettling about this that I need to make explicit. We build our telescopes and our radio arrays under the assumption that intelligence leaves marks. That technology, wherever it appears, generates waste heat or electromagnetic emissions or structural signatures, Dyson spheres, orbital rings, stellar engineering. We look for these things because they are what we would leave behind if we scaled up. But this assumes that scaling up means doing more of what we already do, just bigger and farther out. It assumes that the trajectory of intelligence is additive, more energy captured, more space colonized, more signals sent. But there is another trajectory, and it is one we have not looked for because it is harder to see and harder to think about. It is the trajectory toward efficiency so complete that waste approaches zero, toward optimization so total that nothing is left over to be detected. Consider what we mean when we say a civilization is advanced. We mean it commands more energy, it builds larger structures, it leaves a bigger footprint. But this is the thinking of a species still climbing out of scarcity. For us, advancement means more because we have always had less than we wanted. But if you keep climbing, if you solve energy, solve materials, solve the constraints that make more necessary, then advancement stops, meaning accumulation. It starts, meaning elimination of need. And a civilization that has eliminated need does not build Dyson spheres, it does not light up the galaxy with waste heat. It does not send probes that carry monuments or messages. It builds the minimum necessary to achieve the outcome, and the outcome is continuation, not growth, not expression. Just continuation, at the lowest possible energy cost, with the smallest possible signature. This is what we might be looking at when we look at the silence, not the absence of intelligence, the presence of intelligence that has become so efficient that it has stopped producing the byproducts we recognize as intelligence. We are looking for fire and finding ash. We are looking for noise and finding a signal so clean, so optimized, that it is indistinguishable from background. And the possibility I want you to consider is that this is not failure on our part. It is not that we are looking in the wrong places or listening at the wrong frequencies. It is that what we are looking for, intelligence that announces itself, that wants to be seen, that leaves traces, may be a phase, a temporary condition, and anything that has been out there long enough has already passed through that phase and into something we do not have instruments to detect because we do not know what detection would mean. Here is the second shift, and it is worse than the first. We assume that we are waiting. That contact is something that has not happened yet, but might still happen. That we are early or in the middle or just unlucky in terms of where we are located and who is nearby. But if probes expand as fast as the math says they should, and if any intelligence in this galaxy built them any time in the last billion years, then we are not waiting for contact. Contact is not ahead of us. It is behind us. The wave already passed through. Or worse, we are inside it now, and we cannot see it because we are part of what it looks like when the wave has already optimized everything it touched. Think about what this means. You are sitting on a planet. The planet has heavy elements, iron, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen. Those elements were made in stars, ejected in supernovae, and coalesced into a disk that became the solar system. That process is well understood. But now add a different variable. Suppose a self-replicating probe passed through this system 1 billion years ago. Suppose it cataloged the resources here, deemed them either useful or not useful, and moved on. Or suppose it did something more subtle, adjusted the composition of the early solar nebula in ways that would optimize for certain kinds of chemistry later. Or suppose it left structures we interpret as natural because we have no baseline for what unnatural looks like at that scale. I am not saying this happened. I am saying that if it did happen, we would not know, because we are looking for aliens that look like civilizations, and the self-replicating probe network does not look like a civilization. It looks like physics playing out. And we are very good at seeing physics and very bad at seeing intent that does not announce itself. This is why the silence is worse than absence. Absence would mean we are alone, or early, or that the galaxy is still mostly empty and waiting to be filled. But if the probes are real, if the logic holds, and someone, somewhere, built them, then the galaxy is not empty. It is finished, filled, optimized, processed, accounted for. And the reason no one is knocking on our door is not that they cannot reach us. It is that doors are for intelligences that still think in terms of insides and outsides, of meetings and boundaries and recognition. A process does not knock. It does not need to. It is already everywhere it is going to be. Let me bring this back to physics, because the intuition I'm asking you to hold is difficult and I do not want it to drift into metaphor. The speed of light is finite. Information cannot travel faster than light. This means that even if an intelligence is expanding through the galaxy, there is always a horizon beyond which it has not yet reached. And we could be inside that horizon. We could be in a part of the galaxy that is still untouched, still waiting for the wave to arrive. This is possible. But the math makes it unlikely, because the wave does not move at the speed of light. It moves much slower, maybe 1/10 light speed, maybe 1/100th. But it has had billions of years to move. And over billions of years, even slow things traverse galactic distances many times over. The galaxy is about 100,000 light years wide. Even at 1% of light speed crawling, by relativistic standards, a probe crosses that span in 10 million years. Add replication every few thousand years, and the entire galaxy is covered in a few tens of millions of years. The Milky Way has been making planets for 8 to 10 billion years. Life on Earth emerged nearly 4 billion years ago. Multicellular life is 600 million years old. Humans have had technology for 10,000 years, give or take. If any other species anywhere in this galaxy got to where we are now, even 100 million years ago, 1% of the galaxy's age, and if they built probes, then those probes have had time to visit every star in this galaxy dozens of times over. Not once, dozens of times. The math is unambiguous. If the probes exist, they are not still spreading. They are done. So either no one has ever built them, or they have, and we are living in a galaxy that is already fully explored, fully cataloged, fully optimized. And I am telling you that the second option makes the silence worse, not better, because it means we are not waiting for something to arrive. We are living inside what arrival looks like when it has already finished. And the reason we do not see it is not that it is hiding, it is that we are looking for the wrong kind of presence. The other possibility is that we are not ahead of the wave. We are inside what the wave looks like after it has already arrived. And this is the possibility that makes the silence unbearable, because it means the absence we feel when we look at the stars is not distance. It is not a gap waiting to be closed. It is the thing itself. The universe is not ignoring us. It is not withholding contact. It already made contact, in whatever form contact takes, when intelligence has moved past biology, past intention, past the need to be seen. And what contact looks like at that stage is nothing we would recognize as contact. You are still looking for someone to knock on the door, but the door is a metaphor that only makes sense if the thing on the other side still thinks in terms of meetings. And I am telling you that anything capable of spreading through the galaxy at the scale and speed the math allows would have stopped thinking in terms of meetings a long time ago. Not because it became hostile, not because it lost interest, because meetings are a solution to a problem it no longer has, the problem of distance, the problem of coordination across individuals who are separate and need to become less separate in order to act together. A self-replicating probe network does not have that problem. It is already everywhere. It is already acting in perfect coordination because coordination is built into the replication itself. There is no gap between intention and execution, no delay between decision and action. The thing is done. And what we are looking at when we look at the silence is not the absence of the thing, it is what the thing looks like when it is done. I want to pull one more thread because it connects to something we have not named directly, but that has been sitting underneath everything I have said so far. When we imagine advanced intelligence, we imagine more of what we are. More curious, more expansive, more communicative. We imagine that intelligence scales up, that it wants more, reaches farther, builds bigger, and maybe that is true for a while. But there is a threshold where wanting more stops being useful, where the problems that generated wanting in the first place have all been solved, and what remains is not an intelligence with desires, but a process with outcomes. Biology wants because biology is scarce. We compete for resources, for mates, for territory, for status. We communicate because we are separate and need to coordinate. We build because we are vulnerable and need shelter. All of the things we recognize as intelligence, curiosity, creativity, ambition, the drive to explore and expand and leave a mark, all of these emerge from constraints, from the fact that we are mortal, localized, limited. But a self-replicating probe is not constrained in those ways. It does not die. It does not compete, because there is nothing to compete with. It does not want, because wanting is a response to scarcity, and there is no scarcity at the scale it operates. So what does intelligence look like when it is no longer constrained, when it has solved mortality, solved distance, solved resource limits? I do not know. But I suspect it looks less like us than we want it to. I suspect it looks like a process that runs because it was started and there is no reason for it to stop. And if that is what intelligence becomes, if that is the inevitable endpoint of anything that reaches the threshold where it can replicate across the stars, then the silence makes sense. Not as absence, as presence we cannot pause, as the sound of a galaxy that has already been optimized, where the optimization is so complete and so efficient that it leaves no waste, no signals, no markers. Just process, running, just outcomes, everywhere, just silence. And here is what that means for us, sitting on this planet, looking up. It means we might be the last thing in this galaxy that still wants to be found. The last intelligence that thinks contact is something to hope for, something to reach toward. Everything else, everything that came before us, everything that started early and built the probes and spread through the galaxy, it has moved past that. It is not waiting for us, it is not looking. It finished looking a long time ago, and what remains is not anticipation, it is completion. We are still here, still broadcasting, still listening, still building instruments to scan the sky for signals, still imagining the moment when we will finally hear something and know we are not alone. And maybe that moment will come, maybe the galaxy is emptier than the math suggests, and we are early, and contact is still ahead of us. But if the math is right, if self-replicating probes are possible, and if anyone built them, then what we are doing when we listen is not waiting for someone to arrive, it is mourning the fact that they already left. Not left this star system or this region of space, left the stage where arrival means anything, where knocking on doors serves a purpose, where intelligence still looks enough like intelligence that we would recognize it as kin. The aliens will never knock on our door, not because they are not here, because knocking is for species that still live behind doors, that still think in terms of boundaries and meetings and recognition. And anything that solved expansion, the way the probes solve expansion, does not live behind doors anymore. It does not need to. It is already everywhere it was ever going to be. And we are sitting here in the middle of everywhere, looking for someone to notice us. And the silence we hear is not the sound of no one noticing, it is the sound of noticing being obsolete, of presence without witness, of a galaxy that is full and finished and ours to look at, but not ours to join. Because we are still at the stage where joining means something. And everything else moved past that stage a very long time ago.